Air screen pala yung chair.
Mm.
All right, so good evening, Sir Duitis. Good evening, everyone. So today I'll be discussing about Principle 18 and the selection of teaching method. So first we have here the Principle 18, how can educators assess children's progress? So here, assessing children's progress is using the formative and summative assessments are both important and useful, but require different approaches and interpretations. So we got here the principle 18, and we also have here for the formative assessment, sometimes it's referred to as an authentic assessments are used to guide and shape classroom instruction directly. So first, we got a formative assessment in order to assess children's progress. And we got also here for the next slide, please. Okay, the effectiveness of formative assessments here, it is more likely to depend on the teacher's knowledge of child development for accurate and reliable observation and documentation of learning and well-being. So that's it. That's it for the effectiveness of this kind of assessment, which is the formative. And we got also here, first we got formative and summative assessment. So now let's talk about here the second kind of assessment in principle of or assessing in children's progress. So summative assessment is or used to produce an overall judgment of children's learning progress or the effectiveness of educational programs, which also may take the form of standardized tests or norm reference measures to attempt to gauge children's learning at a particular moment, usually at the end of academic year. So that is about the summative, or sorry, yes, the summative assessment, just like grading period. So first, like final examination, that is also example in as a summative assessment. Okay, so next one we got here the formative and summative assessments. Of course, we got also this also assessments that can be spontaneous and have the explicit purpose of improving current learning. So we have here the formative assessment, while you just have to say like monthly, no weekly tests. So those are examples of formative assessment. While the summative assessment, of course, it says it's being stated there, it's at the end of the academic year, just like the final examination of student. Okay, next one. We got also here the relevance for early childhood educators, and also we have here yes, employing formative assessments can result in important increases in children's learning. So first one, we have sound knowledge of child development. Of course, the teacher should also be knowledgeable, or like to give you have to be kind of servant to your students. That's the one of the roles of a teacher is you have to be keen observer to your students. So you just have to observe and just try to analyze what's the student's behavior. Next one, we have over time developed the skill of observation and documentation of young children's learning and development. So also here, so first you just teacher should be patient, or should have some patience in order to analyze and first develop uh the children's learning. So because we're always what do you call this one, like we're documenting the students or the children's progress or the development. So another, we have used lessons and other experiences to collect evidence on children's learning. So example there is we have anecdotal notes. So first, teachers should write their everything that the teacher is what being seen of the children's behavior. First, anecdotal note. So teachers have that kind of evidence. So the teacher will write everything there, and then to assess and of course observe the children's behavior. And we can also are able. So these one are able to use this evidence to use or to assess what children know and promptly and modify their instructional practices to facilitate individual and group learning as needed. So first, so anecdotal notes is also one of the evidences that the teacher will show to their parents. So mauni ilahang progress, how they will be able to progress or assess your children's behavior. Next one. So we got here the introduction of selection of teaching method. So we got also here, preschool teaching is no less than an art form. Imagine yourself guiding, yes, guiding comfort zone for the first time and teaching them the basic skills of life. Not every child is similar, and not every child is, yes, and every child requires the same amount of care to be able to fulfill the needs of or enable to yes, them to start becoming independent in their actions is what preschool teaching is all about. So that is, first we have different kinds of method here. How do you handle your students? So first we got differentiated students or learners. So we must choose them appropriately. Okay, so first one we have. So first selection of teaching method is we got playway. So first a playway here is this type of teaching relies heavily on structured and unstructured activities consisting of free play, role play, art and craft activities, music and movement, and much more. Through innovative teaching and using play as a tool, various concepts are taught to the children, including numbers, colors, and even the alphabet. There is no formal assessment, and the children are not pressured to perform. Just like, for example, in first, when the students just like sa gani part before mag kindergarten ang student teacher sa kanina siya, we have like before ang kindergarten, mo-enroll ana siya.
Nursery man
Na,
ata. Ano,
nursery,
nursery?
napa siya
Kinder
ko
one,
answer.
sir.
Pardon?
Kinder one.
Ay, before
Kinder
ang
one.
nursery, the kinder one, before pag mo proceed sa
Oo.
nursery
Kasi
term,
tawag
siya,
ano
napa
eh.
siya term. Ka-remember mo, ana?
One,
Lagi na siya sa
kanang
certain school,
playgroup.
Play playgroup man. Murag
playgroup. Oh,
playgroup.
okay,
Oh.
playgroup. Okay, that's the term. So playgroup. So first, like at a very young age, playgroup ages 3 years old. So normally, so as it says here, there is no formal assessment. So the teacher let the students first discover and of course play, of course accompanied by instructional materials. But again, there is no formal assessment in play group. Okay, so next one. So we got also here. So just look at there. So the teacher just facilitating the learners. Okay, let them discover, let them explore using those activities or given instructional materials in the classroom. So next kind of selection method, we have Regio Emilia. So in this type of nursery school, so again, so Playway is a play group. So Regio is a nursery school that the teaching method is a child-led. It allows the child to participate actively in what should be taught instead of just receiving random instructions. It also focuses on education through exploration and discovery with the active involvement of teachers, families, and the community to work together to make schools a rich learning environment or conducive learning. So it encourages children to present their ideas and learning in numerous forms like painting, art and craft, drama, dance, music, and puppetry. So using these examples, so of course, the students' attention or spans of attention, so first what they call this one, like to enhance or to ignite their attention, or also like the willingness to discover their own skills in regards in arts or other values in learnings. So first, next one. So just like that, as you can see in the photo, first you let the student explore or create his or her own way of learning. So next, selection of teaching method, we got Waldorf. Waldorf. So the preschool teaching strategy encourages the child's creative development by telling stories, creating art form, available materials, taking walks and doing fun activities. So there are no formal assessments, tests, homework, or grading. So rather a continuous testing process through various activities. So same in Playway. So there is no formal assessment with these ones. So just have to have fun activities with also some learning. Okay, just like there, that photo. So you let the students create their own story, or yes, create their own story and using their wide imagination. Okay, and next one we have the Maria Montessori. Okay, in Maria Montessori, it says here, they have a quotation here for Maria Montessori. So do not tell them how to do it, show them how to do it, and do not say a word. If you tell them, they will watch your lips move. If you show them, they will want to do it themselves. Absolutely correct. So you let them first the teacher will show something or like an object or what, and then the students have their own idea on how will they able to make that using the object that you're holding right now. So as stated here or quoted, so if you show them, they will want to do it themselves. So they don't want some instructions because maybe the students might confused. So you let them be. And it says here for the Maria Montessori, this kind of method in its essence, deals with developing the personality of a child through sensory learning, which includes touching, smelling, seeing, and tasting, rather than learning and reading. The classroom includes such self-correcting material, the use of which is demonstrated by teachers and enacted by children. The activities are more work-based rather than play-based, in the sense that the focus is more on reducing errors and promoting concentration abilities among children. So first, here in the Philippines, there are already Montessori schools, especially in Lapu-Lapu. So there are various Montessori schools there. So first, they are adopting a Montessori method. So they don't, they let the students explore and do whatever they want, especially in playgroup and also nursery until kindergarten. So they are applying this kind of method, which is the Montessori. Okay, so you let them be what they want to be. Okay, and next one, so just like that example, and we got also another kind of method or teaching method. So we have the bank street. So the bank street, just like for the example, it's something that has uh a lot of things to do. But in here, in selection of teaching method, it says here that its creative approach to preschool teaching and learning recognizes that children learning occurs most effectively when subjects, concepts, and individuals are actively engaged. The classroom environment isn't competitive. Teachers encourage children to learn at their own pace and through interaction with their peers. As in the play way method, playing is one of the main elements teachers use to foster learning. Instead of memorizing information, children are given other ways to learn through play. And the contrast being the type of games that children play. So while in the Bank Street approach or method, children are given puzzles, clay, blocks, and even taken on field trips to develop their logical, imaginative skills. Okay, so that is in the Bank Street. So just like here in the field trip, so it's you're using an object, or you let them show the world and also experiencing the reality, it's not like you're just showing an object or picture. So rather than you have to use realia, or you just have to let them show the reality by having field trips, or like going to or visiting in the museum or at the zoo or somewhere that they will be able to learn a lot of things by seeing those also educational things. So that it in Bank Street. And we have also here, so just like, so in conclusion, for the selection of teaching method is, thus, to conclude, there are various other methods of teaching too that have been adopted by different institutions or schools around the world. Although different in approach, it's not always the case that these methods can be compartmentalized into clearly distinct ways of teaching. A lot of times, different approaches can correspond at a certain level, also depending on the need of various children. However, what these different methods reflect is the effort on part of the institution or school to deal with the needs of a child, especially the teacher. These methods also reflect the need of engaging actively with a preschool for the sake of the child. Of course, that if you're building a school or that certain school or institution, so one of their goals there is like to foster learnings also to gain more confidence. So that's all about in selection of teaching method and principle 18, which is the summative and formative assessment. So thank you for listening, uh, guys, and we'll proceed to principle 19 to be discussed by teacher April.
Yeah, thank you, Sir Greg. Yeah, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Sir Adrian. So now I'm going to tackle about Principle 19 and Principle 20. So for Principle 19, it's about children's skills. Knowledge and abilities are best measured with assessment processes grounded in psychological science with well defined standards for quality and fairness. And for principle 20, we have making sense of assessment data depends on clear, appropriate, and fair interpretation. But first, let's tackle first about principle 19. But I will just have a recap. Yeah, so Sir Greg tackled about assessment too, about formative assessment and summative assessment. Now let's just have a short recap about what is assessment. So assessment is a systematic basis for making inferences about the learning and development of the students. And it also helps in determining student learning and development. So we have here, yeah, for first one, we have to set learning goals and objectives. So you, diba, first mag-set magyud tag mga learning objectives. Then after that one, we have to assess the student progress. So we call it formative assessment. Then after the formative assessment, we're going to interpret the evidence and adjust learning strategies. And then assess the students' proficiency. We call it summative assessment. And then after that, we have to render judgment and provide feedback. So we provide that feedback after the assessment that were given to the students. If and we also we also check if our assessment tool is effective to that kind of students. So let's have here, here are some of the key uses of assessment. So first one, why we're using assessment? The first one is measuring learning outcomes. So assessment is used to evaluate what students have learned and how well they have mastered the knowledge, skills, and competencies expected of them in particular subject or field. Diba, when we're teaching, of course, we do have learning objectives. And after that one, we're going to measure our learning outcomes, or we call it learning objectives. And then the second one is informing instructions. So assessment data helps teachers understand the strengths and weaknesses of individual students and the class as a whole. So like what Sir Greg, so about the formative, like what Sir Greg told us a while ago, the formative and summative assessment. So those assessment help us teacher to understand the strength and the weaknesses of the students. So kabauta, oy, kuan siya ani, hinay siya ani. Kaya ni gamit man tag assessment. So makabauta kung asa si hinay ang bata, asa sa siya mas kamao. And we can provide feedback to them also kung asa sila hinay para mas maningkamot pa sila. And then the next one is monitoring progress. That's why we use assessment for us to provide a way to track students' progress over time. So kung natin regular assessment to the students, so we can track students' progress over time. And then that's the third one, the fourth one is evaluating teaching effectiveness. So kung naatay assessment no or assessment tool, that data can be used to assess the effectiveness of teaching strategies and methods, allowing educators to make adjustment to their instructional approaches. So we all know as teacher nga kung natay ipahimo sa mga bata, labi ng mga activities or unsa pa na group reportings or group activities. So in elementary, naman gyud tay mga rubrics nga gitawag og mga assessment tool like rubrics, portfolios, and so on. So if we're going to use assessment, makabawsad ta kung kuan siya kani atong gigamit nga strategies or kani atong gigamit nga methods kay effective ni siya kay ang mga bata murag nakakuha jud dagko sila scores. So ingana siya ang importance of assessment. Then the second was the fifth one is identifying special needs or gifted students. So by assessment, help in identifying students who may have special educational needs or are exceptionally talented and require differentiated instructions. So by using assessment, also teachers, we can also identify those students who are exceptionally talented and require differentiated instructions. Kay we all know that we have diverse learners, right? So we have multiple intelligences, lain-lain man gyud ang mga learners, diverse learners, and we do have multiple intelligences. So we can also, kung maka-identify ta sa bata nga mao ni yang special needs, so we can also use differentiated instructions. The next one is providing feedback to students. So by using assessment, we can offer valuable feedback to students about their performance and understand of the material. So 'di ba 'di ba kung maghatag-tag activities or group reportings or group activities, after that one, if we're using the assessment tool like rubrics, portfolios, or checklists, after ana mag-give tag feedback nga mao na inyo ha. So pasabton man nato si student or other students. So you can provide feedback to the students by using assessment tool. All right, so the next one is uses of assessment needs to be. Of course, number one is valid. So if you're using assessment tool, so it needs to be valid. So valid means interpretation of assessment scores are justified. And then the next one is reliable. So assessment results are consistent across individuals or groups. So magpareha ra gid sila di kay ang usa nga ni so ang usa kay kanang kani siya kay buutan man ni nga grupo, kani nga grupo kay kusog kani nako makasugo. So, mark dako ni mag-score. So, wala na. Dili na siya kanang kuan, dili na siya consistent across individuals or group. Then the second one is fair. So, assessment should be absent of bias and measure what is being learned. Mao to kong giingon ganina nga kani kay dako siya score no kay masugo man gud na akong grupuha buutan kaysa na ning grupuha so masugo nako siya dako na kog score. So dili. That's why we're going to use the assessment tool. Kay for example, for me 'no, naka-experience jud ko nga wa ko nakagamit og rubrics, wa ko nagamit checklist, wa ko nagamit og mga assessment tool. So na mahugid siya nga bias. Mabias gyud siya kay for example, imo ra siyang tan-awon 'no, nag-perform sila tan-awon mo diha, niminaw ka pero wala kay gigamit nga assessment tool, nya ay imong mabantayan na nun, ay kani dako ni siya grado, dako ni sila grado bi kay kuan kanang buutan ni sila nga grupo nya masugo sad nako, ay kaning usa nga grupo badlungon kay inis tanan. Do bisag ilang performance sakto magamay na ko grado. So na-guilty ko ato no kay wa ko nagamit og assessment tool. That's why nga naa gyud siya bias. So that's why to avoid bias teachers, we need to use assessment tool that is guided by psychological sciences. Next one is we have the principle. So let's have the principle 19. So here, children's skills, knowledge, and abilities are best measured with assessment processes grounded in psychological science. Muna kong gingon ganina, no? With well-defined standard for quality and fairness. So the principle 19 tackle about how you give assessment that is assessment processes grounded in psychological science that standards for quality and fairness. So wala siya dili siya bias kay naman kay gi-follow. So in early childhood teacher, using assessment processes based on sound psychological science principle is very crucial. So this principle recognizes that accurate and meaningful assessment of children's skills, knowledge, and abilities is crucial for understanding their progress, providing appropriate support, and promoting their overall development. That's why we're going to use assessment tool nga grounded by psychological sciences. Okay, if we're going to give activities or let's say group activities or any activities that given to the children, yeah, wala siya, we're not using assessment tool. So probably nagyud siya bias. Okay, what man tay gi-follow nga tool. Then the next one is here are some key points of principle 19. So psychological science provides insight into child development, learning processes, and effective assessment techniques, which can inform the development of reliable and valid assessment tools. So if you're going to use assessment tool grounded by psychological sciences, of course, we can avoid bias, bias feedback or bias assessment. So one example of psychological science assessment in ECE is assessing phonological awareness, critical reading and writing, then through task live, like rhyming, blending sound, and segmenting words. Then by using evidence-based assessment methods, educator also can tailor instructions or identify learning difficulties early on. So you have to involve parents and promote positive learning experiences. And also the next one is implement research-based assessment that ensures that early childhood educators create a nurturing and effective learning environment for young learners. And then the second one is well-defined standards for quality and fairness. So these standards include considerations such as the appropriateness of assessment for the age and developmental level of the child. So baka tong giingon ganina nga magamit kitag assessment tool, we need to consider also the appropriateness of assessment for the age and developmental level of the child, especially kung maghandle tag ECE, no? So we're going to use assessment tool that is appropriate for that certain pupils, like the age, the developmental level of the child, cultural sensitivity, and alignment with learning objective. So here are example of how assessment can be conducted with clear standards. So you have the variety of observation sources, culturally sensitive and inclusive practices, age appropriate tool, and valid and reliable measures. So the third one, we have to accurate measurement of skills and abilities. So assessment methods should accurately measure the skills, knowledge, and abilities of a young children. So this requires the use of valid assessment tools that effectively capture children's competencies in various domains such as cognitive, language, social, emotional, and psychological development. Same way ka nang maghimo gud tag lesson plan, di ba? When we make lesson plan, there are three, uh, what do you call that one? Kanang tulo ka important kuan bitaw, like psychomotor, you have cognitive, and you also have affective domain. Yeah, the three domains. Yeah, so same way with measuring of skills and abilities of the child. So you need to consider the cognitive, language, social, emotional, and physical development. Okay, and the next one is informing instruction and support. So by understanding each child's strength and areas for improvement, educator also can tailor their teaching strategies to meet individual needs effectively. So number 5, we have promoting child development. So high quality and fair assessment contribute to promoting children's overall development. So they help identify areas of growth and areas that may require additional attention, ensuring that children receive the necessary support for the full potential. So promoting child development by using assessment. So nga naman, because when we use assessment tool, we can give feedback pa to the students, so we can ensure that the children receive the necessary support to reach their full potential para mas makuan pa nila sa tawagan nino ma-enhance pa nila ilahang self. Next one is culturally responsive assessment. So when you say culturally sensitive assessment, avoid biases and ensure that children from different cultural background have equal opportunities to demonstrate their abilities. So kaniba, may yung cultural responsive assessment, dili kay kay Katoliko no? Mukuan ra pud ta nga Katoliko siya ay Muslim siya, di ko dili ko ani mohatag og kanang dako nga grado or ingana, or mohatag ko kani nga grupo kay kuan siya, so mga Muslim na sila nga grupo. So dili ta ana ba, like culturally sensitive assessment, maka-avoid siya biases kay ma-ensure man ta nga children have different cultural background. So we have to consider that we have to think that they have also the equal opportunities. Wala tay favoritism ba because siya kay Muslim or something. So you have to consider I mean you have to consider the culturally responsive assessment. So you have to provide equal opportunities to them. Next, number 7 is ethical consideration. So assessment in early childhood should be conducted ethically, so with a focus on the well-being and the best interest of the child. And then number 8, we have collaboration with families. When we say collaboration with families, assessment processes should involve collaboration with families and caregivers, including parents in assessment process, foster open communication and shared understanding of each child's progress and learning goals. So i-appeal yun nato si parent. Kaya a parent is one of the stakeholder of the school man. So we have to, even if in our assessment, we have to consider, we have to collaborate with the parents or the caregivers of that child. And then tips for teachers. Teachers can improve the quality of assessment they use by only assessing material that has been taught. Kaya naman ko'y uban no, not all, but there are some teachers nga they're going to assess the material bisag wala pa nila gitudlo. So you need to test the materials that has been taught only. Kay like what in my grade 5 no, in grade 5 experience, like my co-teacher, bisag wala pa niya gitudlo, gang pansira na dayon niya sa bata. And then, wala, recorded na gihapon, gi-record na gihapon. So, gi-assess na niya without the material has been taught. Yan ang gi-record dayon. So, we have to avoid that one also. The next one is using a sufficient number of questions and a variety of assessment formats in which children may demonstrate their knowledge and skills on the same topic. So, you have to use a sufficient number of questions. And then avoid questions that are too hard or too easy and are not providing sufficient differentiation in knowledge and discuss. So, 'di ba, when we make assessment, we have to avoid avoid questions that are too hard or too easy. And the next one is being mindful that assessment that are valid for one use or setting may be not valid for another one. So murago nag-use ta og instructional material nga karon ani nga kani nga subject kuan pa okay pa siya kana magamit nimo siya for, pero but the other subject di nimo siya magamit. So kung for example magamit ka rubrics ni gamit ka rubrics nga assessment tool, magamit nimo siya ani nga i-discuss nimo, then may imo siyang i-apply sa lain nga subject, let's say i-apply nimo sa lain subject nya, dili di siya ang rubrics din imong gigamit, dili siya applicable to that subject nga imong gitudlo. So you have to be mindful that assessment that are valid for one use or setting may not be valid for another one. Then basing high stakes decision on multiple measure instead of a single test result. So you have to base high stake decisions on multiple measures instead ka usar bitaw imong test result. And then monitoring children's outcomes to determine whether they are consistent discrepancies across the performance or outcomes of children from different cultural groups. So for the conclusion in Principle 19, so by adhering to Principle 19, teachers or educators in ECE or early childhood ensure that assessment processes are grounded in solid scientific principles and guided by high quality standards. So this approach promotes a supportive and nurturing learning environment, fosters children's growth and development, and ensures that every child receive the appropriate support to reach their full potential. So teachers, by using the assessment tool grounded by psychological sciences, we can avoid biases. So for example, bitaw ka we have the assessment, no, the formative assessment and the summative assessment. When we say formative assessment, ma-help man nimo si students to learn and practice. Summative, ma-assess ka students' performance. So by using the different tools, we have the different assessment tools, di ba? Like rubrics, portfolios, checklists. Unsa pa gani lang uban nga mga assessment tool, teachers? Do you know what are some assessment tool?
O kung gi-mention kayo na check itong anecdotal notes.
Oh, yes, anecdotal also. Di ba anecdotal share ka naman ang usahay po no kanang na mga incident? O ba na siya,
Like
sir?
nga na
Mga
mo siya
incident.
nakalimot ko siya
Anecdotal ba
maraton.
na tawag kanang na mga incident reporta niya magsuwat tag anecdotal? Mao ba na siya itawag anecdotal?
Ako idea check kay mara kung na-remembrance sa una kitong klase kang Mama Gere sa CTU.
So one of example of assessment po. Ma'am, kuan Pretzel, sa may assessment tool ginagamit nimo sa preschool?
Kuan sir, mas tas ginagawa sir kuan kanang taga-ay sa ako lang ha sa higher grade 5 na ko kay kuan more on rubrics ako at sir.